how can we, change the situation? How can we build on top of what we have? What Robin is doing, what you're doing, what you know that other people are doing, what I know that other people are doing. I think your point is very well taken, Joyce. A lot is out there, but we're working in silos and we need to come together because that's how we're going to be most effective. Robin, I'm going to dump that back at you. And any thoughts in those areas? How do we progress in terms of pulling this off? Because this is the key. Because if we lose these minds, Africa is finished. Because as you know, it's the richest continent. Everybody knows it. Everybody is there. If not just America, not just Europe, but of course there's China, there's Japan, there's Turkey, there's Saudi Arabia. Everybody is there. And grabbing for a piece of it. And if we don't have a generation that knows itself and knows Africa and knows what it means to be African, then the other system definitely is going to roll over the whole world. And we know that the system that exists at the present time is destroying the planet. And if it destroys Africa, then there's nothing left because it'll destroy just about everything else. Robin, back to you. You have a wonderful tie. It's very complex, many different colors. So I think you probably have many good ideas. So back to you.
The tie itself is from Ethiopia.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's an Ethiopian artist that designed the tie. Okay, and Ethiopia is a good place to actually start this discussion. One of the issues in Africa is a lot of people from Africa, they know the history of either their country or their, what I like to call ends, their area, their ethnicity. What they don't know is the history of anybody else in Africa who is not from their ethnic group. And this leads to a really blinkered vision of history and a really blinkered vision of what it means to be an African. And so it's very, very important that someone needs to produce a Pan-African literature that embodies as many of the different regional histories of Africa in such a way that we can all get pride out of it and include the African-American stuff and include Palmares and include the Mexican president who abolished slavery. There's an African Native American president, and include the Maroon fight back in Jamaica, and include the Maroon fight back in Guyana, and include, so all of this is seen as one story, one struggle. And if we can do that, it becomes something that can be produced all and given out all over the world. And that's something that needs to happen for African countries. Moreover, a lot of African countries see STEM as important, but history is unimportant. And that's another issue that needs to be challenged. Now, in recent years, the amount of new developments in African history are staggering. The amount of new things that we didn't know are staggering, but most people don't know about any of these new things. The discovery of the second oldest boat in the world in Nigeria, 6,500 BC. Most people don't know anything about that. Do you see? And these are the kinds of things that would then you would then use to make up this kind of Pan-African thing. Certainly, I believe this is the way that we move this forward. And if we can get a Pan-African literature that does the same thing, a Pan-African science textbooks that do the same thing, Pan-African maths books that do the same thing. In other words, where the Portland people started it, we need to complete it so that there is if you like, a counter literature out there. And then once you've got things in African countries, you just need to get them into the four main languages. So a lot of what goes on in Africa, if you can get it into English, if you can get it in French, if you can get it into Portuguese, and if you can get it into Arabic, you can get it to across Africa. And then after that, the Afrocentric radicals can then put these things into the local languages. And when we've done that, the revolution's complete.
I'm not sure that the struggle ever ends. That's always I'll be struggling. But conceptually, what you're talking about is spot on. A couple of things. Clearly, Pan-Africanism is the way to go, and I think Joyce knows that. Joyce has been a Pan-Africanist forever. Probably in the womb. It shows the Pan-Africans came out.
Well, I will say that I had a Jamaican babysitter, and that contributed to my early orientation as a Pan-Africanist.
There you go. And
she called me Joyce.
Joyce, yeah, man, hey, Joyce. Yeah, no question that Pan-Africanism is the great way to go. There also has to be the proper understanding of Pan-Africanism, which is almost like a thing in itself. But to agree a little bit, Robin, and also, I want Joyce to jump in. I see this as almost two different things, if you will, meaning that we have to capture the minds of the young people as well as educating the minds of the older ones. So what I hear you talking about really is, shall we say, two different books, one for teenagers and lower ages, and one is a scholarly thing to bring everybody up to date because they have so much new information. And my thinking is that we would need to go forward with the one that is going to be useful for the young minds at the present time, because those are the ones that we really have to capture for us to have a future, because they're going to be the future leaders in 10 years or less, and they need to have a basis. And, I'm glad you brought up the whole concept of revolution, because it's really a knowledge-based revolution. And I think that's why so many revolutions, on our side have not been successful, because the proletariat, shall we say, have not been educated. So you have a cadre which have come from the bourgeoisie or higher up, are leading a revolution, but then they get into power, and then they get seduced by power, and then the revolution falls apart because the masses of people are not educated as to what it is the revolution is all about. And I think, people like Che Guevara, blah, 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 they understood that type of thing, and he was in the process of trying to educate the masses. This is what we need to do in that sense. And, I'm 100% behind that. And clearly, okay, it can be produced, it has to be produced. Joyce, how do we spread that among our people? How do we make that something that those of us in the United States, those of us in the Caribbean, in Brazil, or in Africa, if we can relate to that, shall we say, or can have it at their disposal if they so desire?
Well, I think I'm going to quote Mao Zedong and say something like, let 1,000 flowers bloom, or pull from both ends toward the middle, because I have always emphasized the community. I'm for the village. So if there's a space where we can create learning opportunities that are communal, it doesn't mean that we're not doing the scholarship. But to have young people with older people and educators together, I have witnessed how that works. In our program, the Guardians of Heritage, we have an online space where the children go and look at videos, they have readings, they have assignments. And one of the parents in our group said, yeah, when it's time for the Google Classroom, the whole family breaks out the popcorn and we sit down and watch everything together. That's all ages sitting down together. So that's not foreign to us. That's what we've always done, whether it's the front porch or church. These are the ways in which we learn, model, and educate. So I would say producing the books, producing the films, media and technology has got to be at the forefront because that's where the young people are, but also enabling the young people to use those resources to produce materials to educate their peers. That's what we're doing. So we have young people reading scholarship, they're reading Tony Browder and translating that into something, whether it's an app or a podcast, translating that into something that's more broadly accessible. So we have to do all of that at the same time, not one before the other. And I always say to my students, we don't all have to do the same thing. So some people may be working on this over here. Some people may be collaborating with Robin on those other elements of the secret that he's going to be developing. But we've got to understand that it's all necks are on the line, and we've got to be all in this together.
As a thank you for visiting our website, we are giving you a free copy of our exclusive 100 Black History Facts, which is in fact a taster of our course content. Make sure you leave your email address and we will send it right to you. We hope it inspires you to dig deeper into your history and heritage.
I think that's 100% correct. Robin, you and I have talked a little bit about that book aspect of it, and I think it really needs to happen. We'll talk more about it offline and see how we can make that happen, shall we say, ASAP.
And Robin's point about the languages is fundamental. We've got to be operating in more than one language because
I know I can bring French to the table. We produce something. I have a colleague, several colleagues actually, who would be willing to translate into French.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a big step. I don't know the Arabic, but I'm sure, we can find those, whether we do it in Arabic or Swahili. I don't know which might be more important in terms of where Africa is going at the present time. But certainly, I do believe that English and French should be, certainly right up front. I'm not sure. Well, a Portuguese, more for Brazil than for the Portuguese in Africa, because their presence is not that dominant anymore. But certainly Brazil is a huge country, and you may be able to find somebody, Joyce, that could translate it into Portuguese. So we could cover a lot with that. So Robin, I say that's one of the things we should talk about offline and develop a strategy or a plan, shall we say, to move that forward. And the other aspect of it, Joyce, we're going to need researchers really to deal with the video part of the show, the film part and the video part. Because I think there's a considerable amount of stuff that's out there. I continue to be surprised by information that's out there about my dad. You need researchers to go out there and dig it out. And
to evaluate it and to say, yeah, this is out there, but we don't endorse it. This is not a perspective that advances our work.
Yeah.
One of my students and I did an article about Mansa Musa. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, there's so much material on Mansa Musa online, but it is not helping us in terms of the perspective that's presented. And so we did an article critiquing a selection of video materials about Mansa Musa, how Mansa Musa was represented in textbooks, and we used Greg Carr's Africana Studies framework to evaluate that material in order to bring forward the notion that, hey, we're not just looking for anything. We're looking for the quality of learning that will advance our interests. And so that's the attitude that we need to take, not just because there's people of color in there, but what is being said. That was my experience on the Curriculum Commission. The new textbooks were colorful. as one of the teachers said, they got people of color jumping off the pages, but the concepts were flawed. The concepts were dangerous to us. And so we have to develop some sophistication in terms of evaluating what's so ubiquitous online, TikTok, all of this. We're flooded and even distracted with all of this beautiful pictures. But what is it telling us? What ideas is it leaving with us?
I think that's 100% right, Joyce, because, now with social media, everything is out there. But you look at it, so much of it is silly and misinformation, and the interpretation is flawed. And you know that the people who are talking about it don't have any understanding of where it's coming from or what it really means. And just what you say, what does it mean to us in terms of our assimilating it or critiquing it?
We can call it propaganda. I mean, we just have to name it for what it is, and it's serving a function. And so our leadership responsibility is to use our knowledge critically and, hold up that which does do the work that we want done and offer a sound criticism of what is not good for us.
Again, that points to bringing scholars together at this level that we're talking about. It's not just a matter of, as we've been talking about, producing a certain amount of material, but we need to bring our scholars together in a platform or on a platform, whatever you want to say, of working together, which number one, it extends our reach, because we can get scholars not only from the US, but from the Caribbean as well as from Africa. So,
and we learn from each other. I just want to give you one example of how important this point is that you're making. Dr. Gonçalves y Silva and I were in Egypt with Molefi Asante on tour. And we were sitting in a hotel, and we noticed an advertisement for another tour to go to a temple. And it was the temple of Dandara. And so Dr. Isilva said, Dandara, that was Zumbi's wife's name.
oh, wow.
Really? So we made a couple of calls and she was right, but I never would have known that. But because we were together, she could bring her perspective, I could bring mine, and we left with new knowledge that we wouldn't have had just working in isolation.
Yeah, a great point. And you mentioned what you know about African history being taught in London, or in England, I should say. Apart from Robin, and Robin knowing what was going on in Portland, so he knew some of our story here. We know some of his story there. So we do need the Pan-African perspective at all levels in terms of scholarship, as well as the communities that we're going to be dealing with, and therefore bringing them together. Robin, any last words as we wind up on this segment? Because I think we're going to be talking a little more in terms of details as we go down the road of doing these things.
Yeah, I think we need to do more of these types of discussions on specifically how we take the ideas and concepts and then put them in systems and structures that as many people can access them. And then that's the way that we change the education of the next generation. So I thought today was really, really productive, really constructive. And we need to have more from theory into practice type of thing.
Okay, well, Joyce, I hope you're going to be with us for a little longer haul down the road. But I know that you're going to be going back to sort of full-time duties, but I hope you'll have enough time for us in one way or the other. We'll work around your schedules, et cetera, et cetera.
May I close out by offering a couple of readings that I would recommend for our listeners?
Wonderful.
First of all, Dr. Hasimi Maiga's book, Balancing Written History with Oral Tradition, The Legacy of the Songhai People. What Robin was asking for in terms of a Pan-African history is in here, looking at those empires, all the different groups that were a part of that history. And this is a book in English and in French. I'd also like to refer to Wade Noble's new book, From Black Psychology to the Science of Being, SKH, which is educational for all of us. And Dr. Vera Nobles has a children's book. We don't want to leave off the children. And her book is Dzongbe, the Spirit Dog, Seeing My Way in the World. It's a wonderful opening to what I mentioned about perspective. And our beloved Dr. Sanford, From Enslavement to Belovedness, for the Dignity of My People. That's her memoir. And my most recent book is We Be Loving Black Children, Learning to Be Literate about the about the African diaspora. And this is a little thin book written for parents and educators, and the authors are teachers describing how they do this Pan-African education that we're talking about. So we have a lot to draw on and to use in the activities that we're talking about. And I've enjoyed the conversation today, and thank you very much for inviting me.
I think next time we're going to have that in the chat so that everybody can have a chance to write those things down, et cetera, et cetera. But this has been wonderful, and I think it's the beginning of a good journey where we're going to be able to make an impact on educating ourselves about our history, about who we are, and how we go forward from here. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Robin, for being here. Thank you, Joyce. It's good to see you again and exchange ideas, etc. Look forward.
Good to see you both. Ciao, Robin.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.